Tracer's Emily makes her first appearance in the game, and ladies and gentlemen, there has been a huge Overwatch League shock. Guys, welcome to the channel. I am Stylosa. So this is Tracer's Emily. This is on the PTR. This is the first example we've got of Tracer's girlfriend actually being in the game. So this is a spray. It's specific to Tracer only, obviously, and it's on the PTR. You can buy it for 25 credits, which is awesome. So this actually begs the question, doesn't it? Are we going to see more of Emily in the future? Are we going to see more types of integration like this? More bits and bobs added to the game? Hopefully we do. I mean, I'd like to see more about Emily. I'd like to see more just lore in general. I think this is like beyond competitive and matchmaking, which it looks like Blizzard are finally starting to address the complete lack of lore, or rather the lack of lore direction, or the lack of compiled lore, or the just lore, ladies and gentlemen, is something that needs to be addressed. So if we see more of this, it's good. But yeah, this is also quite cool as well, because remember, we've just gone through Pride, and so it's nice to see Emily added to the game in a spray. Awesome stuff. Right then, let's get stuck into Overwatch League. The first thing I want to show you guys is this. This is the stage 4 standings. Now, what this is it shows you the stage league at the moment, not the overall league, because we'll get onto that in a second. So these are the teams that have performed the best during stage 4. So of course we've got Los Angeles Valiant at the top. We've got LA Gladiators. So LA have completely dominated this stage. I mean, look at that. 9 wins, 0 losses, 9 wins and 1 loss. That is like pretty ridiculous. New York have had their worst stage, which is kind of funny, but they're in 3rd position, but they have made it to the stage playoffs. Now it's important we don't get confused here with actual league playoffs and stage playoffs. And then we've got a couple of teams here which can actually make it into the next slot. So you've got Houston, Dallas, and Philadelphia. Now, I think, honestly, it would be nice to see Dallas actually make it to a stage playoff, because Dallas have had a really poor season, like an extremely poor season. However, this stage, they've played by far their best. They're still, you know, a pretty shaky record, 5 wins to 4 losses, but it's still solid. You know, they can still make it into the playoffs. But I think they could give literally any team a pretty solid game. So that would be awesome to see that. Philadelphia Fusion as well. It would be nice to see those guys make it. I think they've got to play London tonight, which is going to be a pretty hype game, because Philadelphia need to win that. Because if they win that, then they've got a really good chance of jumping forward and going into the actual stage playoffs. Anyway, let's get stuck into the meat of this video. This is the overall standings of Overwatch League. Now, if you guys remember, at the start of the league, I made a video and I said, these are the power rankings for all of the teams, where we expected the teams to be. Now, I'm not going to embarrass myself and bring that up and show you in this video. You guys can go and search it if you want to find it out. However, you will find a lot of analysts, a lot of, I guess, professionals, a lot of esports observers, everybody like that, a lot of Overwatch hardcore fans. They kind of thought the same way. So we would have put Seoul and London at the top, and then New York in 3rd. And then you start sort of filling in all the other teams. But right at the bottom, you will put Boston, Uprising. Okay? All right, then. Let's take a look at what has actually happened, because this is the overall standings. This is the final standings for the main Overwatch League. The teams at the top, these are the green teams which have achieved playoff status. They will play in the grand playoffs, which the winners of the playoffs then play in the grand final, which takes place in New York at the end of July, which is going to be absolutely utterly huge, because apparently they've sold out an arena of over 20,000 capacity, which is going to be crazy. However, we don't know who's going to get there just yet. So let's take a look at these teams here. New York are undoubtedly the best team in the league. Their record speaks for it. Look at that. 34 wins, 6 losses, plus 83 map differential. That is insane. That means they just win all of the time. They are a complete beast of a team and a total powerhouse. And you can see, like, if we go back to their standings, well, I won't bring them up, but if you look at their standings from this stage, they've actually lost, what have they lost? 3 games. So overall, they've lost 6 games in the entire season. And this stage, they lost 50% of their total losses, which is crazy, right? They're insane. What's interesting to me, though, is rank 2 and rank 3 and even rank 4, because there is no Seoul Dynasty, there is no London Spitfire. Look at number 2, it is LA Valiant. They are undoubtedly the second best team in the league. They've got the second best record, it speaks for itself. That is a bit of a shock because we didn't expect that. Because remember, this isn't a Korean team. Like, people would look at you and say you're a complete madman if you would have put Boston in third place as well at the start of the season and not included Seoul, which is the major shock, but we'll get onto that in a second. It's just totally ridiculous. Like, so LA have played really well. They don't have a primarily Korean roster, so that's awesome. It's like a Western team almost. It does have Korean players. Like, every team has Korean players, but it's not like New York or London where the entire team is Korean or Seoul. Then we look at Boston Uprising, and they did the same thing. Now, Boston, they started off kind of poor, but then they rapidly got better. However, we think a lot of this is down to their coach, Krusty, or their old coach. He is now no longer their coach, and he now works for San Francisco Shock, who have seen a pretty major upturn in their performances, while Boston have kind of struggled. And you can sort of tell. Yeah, but they went a stage completely undefeated, which no team has ever done. Like, that is a complete Overwatch League record. Even New York didn't do that. New York always lose a game every stage. That's just crazy. Then we look at LA Gladiators. Now, this is a team which I think has performed extremely well. And there are a couple of reasons for this. And it's actually, like, you guys know I'm a London Spitfire fan, and I do things for the team as well. I help the guys out. But when you look at the rankings here, LA Gladiators are above London. LA Gladiators were a pretty poor team until they picked up Fisher. Now, Fisher was a player for London Spitfire, but London Spitfire had too many tank players. They had Gesture and they had Fisher. Now, what happened with London is Gesture and Fisher, try and say them faster. Gesture and Fisher. Blah, blah. Those two players, anyway, are very, very similar players. Like, you couldn't, like, they're interchangeable. You could use one or use the other. The thing is, with the main tank position, you want to keep it consistent because you want your team to get used to working with that player, because they will have little quirks here and there. However, London made the decision to sell Fisher, which was totally the right decision. They did the same thing with Rascal as well, because you don't want to keep these players on your bench. You want to sell them because they are players that should be playing. LA Gladiators pick up Fisher. Their main tank before Fisher was iRemix. He's a good player. He's an Overwatch League player, don't get me wrong, but he's not on Fisher's level. Fisher completely allowed that team to play in a different way. Now, it's not like Fisher has just made them totally, a rank 4 team. That's not happened. What has happened is he's given them a way to play with more space. What tanks typically do in Overwatch is create space and create opportunities for the other players. The other players on LA Gladiators are totally taking these opportunities and they're getting stuck in. So this is like a major improvement. Boston and LA, in my eyes, are like the most... I don't want to say they're overperforming, but they are performing really well, or they have performed really well throughout the season. So it's really great to see, because everybody expected we were just going into this entire sort of all the Korean teams are just going to dominate Overwatch League, which didn't turn out to be the case, or hasn't just yet. It possibly might when we get to the playoffs and all of that happens. Anyway, we'll get on to that. So next up, we've got London Spitfire. As you guys know, London Spitfire, as I said, it's a team I work with. It's a team I support. They've had a very up and down season. They won the first stage. They literally blew everybody away. It was like, oh my God, this team's so powerful, it's ridiculous. And then they started to go very hot and cold. It's almost like you don't know what London team you're going to get. However, the most recent games in this stage have been very strong from London. London are starting to potentially get it all together just in time for the playoffs. So they're totally a team to watch. Yeah, I'm biased as well, but they're totally a team to watch because they seem to be ramping up their performances. And when you look at London compared to New York XL, which are by far the favourites to win the entire season, London, on paper, have got the best chance of beating them. So it's going to be a super, super interesting matchup if that actually happens. Then you get Philadelphia Fusion, and they're kind of the same as London because they go really hot or really cold. They either perform absolutely ridiculous or they perform really terrible, and you're like, what's going on, guys? Now, early on, they had a player called Shadowburn. They've still got Shadowburn, very good Genji player, and he was playing really well. But then over time, they started to play with EQO, who's another sort of Genji flex DPS type player, like Shadowburn is. But you would see certain things happening with their team. As I said, they play really, really well. Then they play really quite bad. The thing that sticks out in my mind for me is when they got through to I think it was the Stage 3 playoffs, or was it Stage 4? No, it was Stage 3 playoffs, I think, against London. And they beat London. London, I know from sort of being involved with them, we're not exactly expecting Philadelphia Fusion to get through, so it's a little bit of a shock. It should have been another team, potentially a team that London were preparing for, let's say. Anyway, Fusion turned up, and Fusion destroyed London and rightfully got into the finals of that stage. And luckily, they lost to NYXL, but they gave them a pretty good run for their money. So Fusion, like, it's a fun team to support, Fusion is, because it can be really good or really bad. But I guess once you get really hardcore into supporting them, it can be a bit like, oh no, what team are we going to get to gate? Pretty much like London, I guess. Houston Outlaws. So this is a team probably with the biggest fan base. I guess you could say Dallas are there as well. Yeah, they're not in the playoffs. So all the teams now that we're going to discuss. So Houston, Seoul, which is massive, San Francisco Shock, Dallas, Florida Mayhem, and Shanghai Dragons are all eliminated from the end of season playoffs. Now, Houston only just missed out. It's kind of heartbreaking for Houston because they had to beat NYXL to have a chance of remaining in it. And NYXL, well, they took NYXL to the full 5-game series, and then they got pretty heavily stomped on the Nepal decider, which was a bit unfortunate because Houston really gave NYXL a really good run for their money in that series. They took them completely to the wire, but just seemed to fall short at the end. And that's kind of what's happened with them throughout the season. They almost get there, but then just fail when it really matters. I think, again, this is a very interesting team to watch going forward into the future. If it makes a couple of changes, I think it can be a really strong team. Like, there's no reason in my head why a Philadelphia or a Houston couldn't be in the position that LA Valiant or Boston Uprising are, occupying 2 and 3rd instead of 6th and 7th. And obviously 7th is bad because you're not in the playoffs. So let's talk about Seoul Dynasty, which, yeah, this is huge because Seoul Dynasty is Lunatic High with a couple of additions. Now, Lunatic High, in case you guys don't know, were the best Overwatch team in the world by an absolute mile before Overwatch League began, if you base it on number of titles they have won. However, when you dig deeper into Seoul Dynasty, it wasn't actually a complete whitewash. It wasn't like they were just annihilating teams in Korea. That never happened. They were, they were heavily pushed, but they always came out on top. So this gave them a pretty sort of sturdy quality. They're going to try their best. They're going to be very difficult to beat. They're going to be, I guess to use like a football or soccer analogy, they're kind of like a Jose Mourinho team where they're going to defend really well and then they're going to hit you. And then are you going to be able to beat them? However, they end the season in 8th position. They were terrible. Right? They started off okay. They made some strange decisions and then they started to lose all of the time. They've recently just lost to Dallas Fuel. They lose to everybody. It is quite shocking. This is a team that should not be losing. Even though, I just said, hey, maybe they weren't like massively dominant as everybody thought they were in Korea. They were still the champions. They were the multiple champions of Apex. This is a major shock. Like, we don't know what's actually happened with Seoul. Like, you can maybe start throwing things around, like maybe they're not having a great time in America. Maybe they're finding it hard to adapt. Maybe LA just doesn't work with them. They are Korean after all, and it is a major shock. It's okay for us as English-speaking viewers watching this video, because when we go to America, well, they speak English, so it's kind of okay. It's okay for me because they think my accent's amazing. They're like, hey, oh my God, you're British? I'm like, yeah. Like, do you know the Queen? I'm like, no, but thanks for asking. It always rains over there, doesn't it? Anyway, this is a terrible American accent. This is besides the point. It is a major shock. Seoul Dynasty, massive disappointment. San Francisco Shock. Now, this was a team I called the most boring in the league to watch. They totally were. However, they have recently started upping their game. Their record is obviously quite bad because for the first, 4 stages of the league, they were not great. I mean, I guess saying all 4 stages is not true. They actually didn't perform too bad in stage 4. It was their best performance, I believe, in a stage, and they came in 7th place. But yeah, this is a team which is going to get better, I think. Obviously, with the addition of the coach from Boston Uprising, I think this team will be much higher next season. But it's a long way away next season, so we'll have to wait and see. Dallas Fuel, though, this is another bit of a shock. This was another team. People, when you go back to the power rankings, people are putting sort of Seoul at the top. They were putting London 2nd, they put NYXL 3rd, then they put Dallas 4th, or maybe Dallas even 3rd. Dallas were a disaster, an absolute disaster. So loads of things went wrong with Dallas. Managerial problems. I don't know too much about coaching issues, but just loads of team problems. Like buying players that don't necessarily work. Obviously, the whole XQC drama, which isn't really I don't think that's XQC's fault. Like, XQC is good enough to play at Overwatch League level, but XQC needed support, and I don't think the team gave it him. And I don't think that's fair on XQC to say it was his fault. It's not. I think it's the team's fault. So again, that was a problem. However, they've and of course they had all the problems with Effect, which was kind of bad. Like, Effect was tweeting things out saying like, oh no, you know, I don't think I really want to be here anymore. It just wasn't great. Anyway, Dallas have started to turn it around, as is evident by the fact that they're going into the playoffs in stage 4. So, well, it's not confirmed yet, but I would imagine if they get the win, I mean, well, no, it's not confirmed yet. How can I say that? So Dallas, Philadelphia, and Houston have still all got a shot of getting into the playoffs. So we'll have to wait and see there. But this is their best stage. What's interesting is they don't have their best player, who you could argue is Effect. Now, he's not in the team, but we've been seeing more of Seagull. So that's a good thing to see. Seagull is a great player to watch. Obviously, he's a great personality as well. But yeah, Dallas are still an interesting one. I think it's going to be difficult for Dallas next season, so we're going to have to wait and see what they're going to do. There probably will be additions to the team. Like, they brought in AKM, and that just really didn't work. So, a bit of a strange decision there, but we'll have to wait and see what happens with Dallas. Now, at the bottom of the league, ladies and gentlemen, we've got Florida Mayhem, and we've got Shanghai Dragons. These are bad. Really bad. Now, Florida Mayhem actually have got 7 wins, so it isn't all bad for them. But they've lost 32 games and got a minus 74 map differential. That is abysmal. That is horrendous. What's the problem with this team? Well, I don't know. Like, when they first... Like, in the first stage, they only had 6 players. I think they only had 6 players possibly at the start of the second stage, although I think they brought in or started to bring in players around about that time. It was probably understaffed, undermanned. There wasn't enough. Their coach was changed. A lot of stuff. A lot of problems with this team. It should be better than it is, but it isn't really in a great position. I expect this team to be completely gutted. I expect, not as in like, oh, we feel sad, but as in like the roster will be heavily changed. They will make massive sweeping changes to this team. They have to, because if they don't, they're just going to be bottom of the league again, which isn't great. So talking about bottom of the league, this is Shanghai Dragons. They are currently 0-39. They have lost 39 games. They've lost every single game. Tonight will be very interesting. Will Shanghai get the big 40, the big 4-0? Lost every single game. What is going on with this team? We don't really know, to be honest. It's just a complete mess. They don't seem to be working together. They've brought in Kaguri, which I think she's actually a really good player. But the problem is you can't bring in players and expect the team to change around. Like, one of the things which annoyed me last time I was at the Overwatch League arena, it was the Kaguri's debut, and there was a lot of press in the arena, and I don't know whether these guys were particularly Overwatch fans or esports fans or whatever, but they were all going on about Kaguri. They were like, oh, Kaguri's so great, she's great, we want to get pictures with her, she's going to be amazing, she's going to absolutely win the game. And I'm like, guys, I don't think you understand how Overwatch works. Like, one player is not going to make a difference. Like, Shanghai Dragons are a disaster. Like, if Florida are bad, Shanghai are 1,000 times worse. They've got no teamwork. They've got no, like, direction. They don't know what they're doing. Their team comps are terrible. Like, they've never come close to actually winning a game. Never. Now, the good news is they play Florida Mayhem. So, depending on when you guys have watched this video, if you've watched it as it's gone live or you've watched it maybe later on in the night, this game might have actually already happened. But this is their best chance for a win against the team which is, well, it's the second worst team. But even then, I think Florida will just destroy them 4-0. So we'll have to wait and see. Ladies and gentlemen, it is crazy Overwatch League. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, then let me know what you think about it in the comments below. We are going to have the playoffs, which happen next month, and then at the end of next month we go into the massive grand final in New York. I cannot wait to see that. Hopefully I get to go there, which is going to be absolutely awesome. But yeah, all right guys, I've been Stylosa, and my voice is about to go because I've just spoke about Overwatch League for ages, but I do enjoy Overwatch League. It is a wonderful thing. If you guys enjoyed the video, then like the video, and remember, there is a competition running, so if you go into the video description, there is a link to win a load of RGB HyperX goodies. All right guys, I'll catch you on the next one. Toodaloo.